Hello, welcome to another Real Raw Moment. And today's is one that I've been looking forward to doing. I've spent some time considering how I would present it, even though this is, my Real Raw Moment done in one take. Certain times I spend a bit more researching to make sure I know what I want to say in a way that is appropriate for one, factual for another. So let's just dive right on into it, okay? What is the root cause of alienation, parental alienation, grandparents, caregivers, etc. We're just going to lump it into alienation. So put up your hand if you have said or you think, my ex is a narcissist, my ex is a sociopath, my ex is psychotic, my ex is dangerous, my ex has borderline personality disorder, my ex is bipolar. Those are the 5 or 6 common ones that I hear a lot. Did you raise your hand? You likely did. And this is something I hear all the time. And I'm a moderator in many groups, some of them quite large. And day after day, I see the same thing repeated. And what I don't see is diving into the why. So let's use narcissism. First of all, narcissism, say that 5 times fast. Goodness. Narcissism is when a person feels that they are above others, that they're better than others. Okay, look, first of all, we are all narcissists in some way. That is part of the human psychology. There are moments in our lives when we think we are better than everybody else, when we put ourselves above other people, when we look down our nose. That is part of ego. There's good ego, there's negative ego, and I'm not going to go into a big dissertation on ego and what it happens. I want to first normalize the word narcissism because we all can be narcissists, and we can all be narcissists situationally. There are not a ton of people where a psychiatrist would clinically say you are a narcissist in all aspects of life. That is your diagnosis that we treat. That you are a sociopath in all aspects. That you have borderline personality disorder in all aspects. Very rare that those are clinical, chemical, embodied. You can't avoid it. It is who you are. Personality disorders and diagnoses. A lot more of these kinds of diagnoses or lack of diagnosis, how it turns out, let's just say, is situational. And it is often, and I'm looking over here, I have 2 screens, I'm looking over here, stuff that I pulled up. 90% of the time, let's even call it 75% of the time, it is situationally and intergenerationally trauma based. Now, you may be already up in arms saying, well, Natalie, I don't really care what the problem is or was. I hate this person and they're hurting me. They're hurting my child, and I get all of that. Listen, I get all of it. To remind anybody who hasn't watched for a while, I've been alienated 2 times. Once from both my children, now the second time from my son. I deal with these thoughts and emotions all the time. So I'm speaking from a place of, I got you. I understand the waves and the roller coasters of emotions as you're trying to navigate this world that no parent was ever meant to be in. The horror story of what alienation is. And it is a horror story. You know, if you ever watch true crime, it can be right up there. But let's start here. It wasn't always that way. Let's talk about our partners for a second. We are very quick. I'm using the royal we here, and based on all of the posts and stuff I read, we appear to be very quick to nail somebody to the wall. To nail our ex who's hurting us with a big label. Because our brains require it. Our brains want an answer. So these labels come in handy. The brain also wants the path of least resistance. Looking beyond these labels takes work and intention in alienation. And maybe it's for you and maybe it's not, but it's something that I want to actually can we peel back a few more layers here so that we can find ways to not have alienation happen or have it resolved faster. So for anybody who has, even in this short broadcast, put their hands up and gone, my ex is a narcissist. Okay. Let's take a moment with that. Would you have said that when you were dating them? Would you have said that when you married them? Would you have said that when you had your child or children? Would you have said that at any other time until this instance, which is so out of scope as a parent that we don't have a name for, we're just learning, but the why eludes us? I would wager to say a lot of people out there are going to say, well, no, he wasn't a narcissist, or she wasn't a narcissist when we got married. He or she was not this, or was not this. I didn't see it coming. Now, the next stage, often, that I find, because people want to justify the current labeling with the past. Well, obviously, they always were. I just didn't see the red flags. Absolving ourselves of any responsibility and putting it all on the other person. The root cause of most traumatic instances, reactions, and the diagnoses, clinical diagnoses, has to do with past trauma in your childhood, their childhood, and intergenerational trauma. We all bandy the word about triggers nowadays. Well, separation and divorce is a massive trigger for lots of people. It is unnatural, right? We go into marriage. I know I did twice. Went into marriage. This is it. Didn't work out that way. When we talk about what got triggered along the way, we don't often, or I haven't seen it, talk about the person that we're labeling. What caused them to take narcissism to the next level, to the point where they pull away your child from you? I'm going to put it out there because this is one of the most common reasons that people do anything, and it's out of fear. And in your situation, you can say, and I will say I felt this, well, they're not scared. They're the ones in control. They're the ones doing the things to me. How can they be scared? Well, why are they doing those things? Arguably, of course, the end result is to you and to your child, but likely it is fulfilling or triggering something within them. Fear. Abandonment issues. That's a big one too. That they're going to be abandoned by their children when these children learn that the divorce is happening, separation is happening, and it's never pretty. So what do? They overcompensate. They're going to make sure that doesn't happen to them by making it happen to you. And it doesn't happen overnight. And we often don't do the work to go down to the surface on either side to say, why am I reacting this way? Sorry, Robert, if you know, you know. Why do I feel that way about my ex when it involves my children? What am I really worried about here? What am I really worried about? I know what mine was. One of them was being seen as being a bad mother. My marriage ended without me being involved in that ending. And I looked at my kids and I wanted to make sure that I was never seen as a bad mother, a neglectful mother, a mother who got divorced at their tender years of, I think, They're 12 months apart, so 5 and 6. And it bubbled up in me in different ways. Small ways, but ways nonetheless that, probably impacted my children. I'll give this example. Old school book. I'm actually going through all of my kids' papers right now. That's why it's so on my mind. There's this home book that used to come home to our home every week, and child would write something, you wrote a response over the weekend, and it came back. It was like this little journal of what was going on in their lives. And then suddenly that book was not in my care or control all the time. And that triggered fear in me. It made me want to control the narrative. And I'm sure if you asked my ex, you would probably say the exact same thing. I took it to great lengths to ensure that I was the one writing in the book and I was the one seen as the parent who was doing all the right things, because I was scared. Ironically, scared of being erased, which did actually happen. When I reflect on my own reactions, and I have many, many more. I mean, if you heard my life story, it's gone with the wind times 10 and you need popcorn. I sat and reflected as to why my alienators did do what they did. And I know, obviously, both my alienators, I know their personal histories really, really well. One of them I could say, clinically, likely diagnosable narcissist and sociopath. But the other, I can say after research and self-reflection and a lot of therapy, that their reasoning has to do with stuff in the past that they haven't dealt with. It's that simple. Does it mean that I excuse their behavior? No, I don't. Their behavior, egregious, wrong, hurtful, horrible. But they weren't always that way. When I was cleaning, as I've been doing in my office, there's other photo albums I'm coming across. And I wish I had the picture here. It's one of the pictures from our wedding day. Yeah, I still have them. And I look at that photo, and I've really taken time to study it and look and say, was this all just a ruse? Did I not see the signs? No, it wasn't a ruse. Our marriage had its great moments, and it sure had its hardships. And along the way, there were a lot of things triggered in both of us that led to behavior that I may not be proud of. I can't speak for the other side. All I can do is look at it and go, okay, I don't like what you did. I don't like what you're doing. I do see that there's more to it than just you being a narcissist, or suddenly you're the most horrible narcissistic person on earth. I know you better than that. And that's something I've really leaned into over the years. And even when my marriage imploded, it was something that I leaned into right off the bat, actually. Where is this really coming from? Part of me wanted to believe that it was not conscious and blatant, that it did come from past trauma, it did come from past experiences, it did come from fear, it did come from anger, whatever it came from. It didn't come out of the blue. And it didn't come out of the blue. The implosion of my marriage, the reason for it, on his side, didn't come out of the blue. I understand. I like it. I understand why it happened. Again, I keep saying it, doesn't mean I condone the choices. I do understand the root cause. So without belaboring it, because I've already gone on, I want to know from you, your comments, your beliefs. understanding, or you're just like, Natalie, no, like, screw that. But maybe being able to take a moment to look at the other parties as human beings, imperfect, flawed, triggered, abused. We're all kind of in that same pool together. They're not the exception to the rule on that one. Now, how we all deal with that is a whole different story, and it doesn't excuse an alienator's behavior. What I find it does is, for my brain, is give some foundation as to why things have gone or are going the way that they are. And it also helps me communicate and approach the situation in a way that the other party or parties are going to respond to in a non-aggressive manner. What I see when I talk about the root cause of these kinds of things is a way to turn the dial down on the vitriol, the hate speech, the slamming back and forth, the energy that's spent on words that we can't back up because we're not psychiatrists, and creating situations that maybe with some work we can mitigate, tone down, and in turn help our children and help ourselves to get away from alienation sooner than later. Now, I know that's a big, tall order. I know, again, of course, where alienation comes from and all the things, and I'm still in it. And my words might seem like a fairy tale, Pollyannish, unrealistic, delusional. Those are all labels you can call me too, because that's all they are. They're just labels. But they're our perception of a situation and what we're going to call somebody else to make it okay for ourselves, for what's happening. And what I encourage you to do is have some compassion. Understand the humanity of the other person. Be able to consider where they came from and where they are now. Because it wasn't always this way. You loved them once. You married them. You had a relationship with them. You had children with them. The way we talk about our exes now doesn't serve us well. Because if they are really, have always been the person that we're claiming that they are now, what does it say about us? It's food for thought. I really want to know your comments below.